Hi, everybody. Good morning. It's ECM. And here come the doggies. Welcome to Resistance Live. I'm so excited actually to be using the brand again. It's really funny how like all of a sudden everything just kind of feels right. I'm really glad you all are here. I'm super excited to be back. Many of you know by now that we're going to be here live now 3 days a week. This was a decision that was made in conjunction with all of our Patreon subscribers who have been with us for so long now. Much love to all of you guys. We think you're amazing. And there are still going to be added benefits for our Patreon people. So one thing I just wanted to mention here really quick is that, of course, you can become a subscriber over at patreon.com/resistancelive to ask questions in advance of every broadcast, to get a Sunday coffee hour with me that's private, and to get various other benefits that are coming your way soon. We're revising some of these. So mad gratitude to everyone over on the Patreon feed for being here. And I'm really, really excited about like being back here for real. Okay, so I am ECM, as you know. I'm coming to you, as always, from occupied Tongva land, where we have just gotten a tropical storm warning in Southern California for the first time in history. I want everybody, by the way, who is in the Southwest and Southern California and the Baja Peninsula of Mexico to please take this very seriously. I'm just going to say that as someone who has lived through hurricanes on the East Coast since I was a very young child, my sense, particularly this morning with like camp drop-offs and other things, is that people here are really not prepared for what's about to happen here. And we've had a serious drought underway for many years now. We got some of it back this spring with a lot of rain, but the conditions for this are really frightening, to be honest, because if Palm Desert and Palm Springs get pummeled the way that they are expected to, there's going to be mass flooding. And here, there's a real threat of mudslides in the various mountain regions and the canyons and all of that. So please take it very, very seriously. And if you live here, make sure that you're prepared with bottled water. And there's, threats of power going out. I'm charging all my power blocks this morning. So please make sure that you're getting ready for this. And I went so far as to buy like a solar powered hand cranked radio just in case today, so that we're ready for everything that's coming. All right, so I am coming to you, as always, from occupied Tongva land. Today, I am wearing a white mock turtleneck, sweatery type thing. This is my current favorite shirt. My hoop earrings are in. My hair is pulled back. I am a pink-skinned, fair-skinned woman. I've got like a kind of fairly cool winged eyeliner on today. My eyes are green, and I'm sitting in my office. So I'm really excited to be here with all of you. All right, I have a long list today of stuff to talk about. We're going to get started first and foremost with the issue of this. I mean, I got to tell you guys, I laughed so hard when this news broke last night with Donald Trump's request for an April 2026 trial date in the Jack Smith election interference case. I'm just going to say this to all of you, like that request is insane. Like no lawyer that I am ever aware of has asked for a trial date 2.5 years out from the indictment. It's nuts. Like it's like legitimately off the rails. And we know that he's seeking to delay. We know he wants to be reelected. We know that the anticipation would be that he would be able to shut down any federal prosecution if he was reelected. I'm going to remind you all, I don't think there is a snowball's chance in hell of that happening, but don't let your guard down. I think that the judge is just going to dismiss this request out of hand. And I'm going to remind everybody of what I said earlier on in the week, which is that there is an interest in everyone knowing whether or not he's going to be convicted of a crime in advance of the 2024 election, including Republicans, including the far right wing of the GOP. I mean, they're making their bed. They're going to lie in it. But, he's asking for a trial date that could result in his incarceration in the middle of another term of president. I mean, it makes no sense. I was asked also to remind everyone here, and I want to explain something here about the way that this works. He does have a small trial team. Like the concerns about this are legitimate because he can't retain a big law firm. He's too toxic. He doesn't pay his legal bills. Nobody wants to be associated with him. And he's got, lawyers coming after him, including Rudy Giuliani, for back lawyer fees that he hasn't paid. All that said, though, this claim that it's too much material for them to review in the next 2.5 years, I just have to call BS on that completely. Those of you who have been here for some time know why, but let me just explain all of this to all of you. there's technology available right now, and there has been for the last like 15, 20 years, that allows you to do what's called OCR searching of document materials. And basically what this means is that all the documents are rapid scanned into a database, and you can search those materials just the same way you would search a PDF for relevant, Boolean searches, which is a type of searching that is like, one word within 50 of another or something like that, or just for keywords that may be relevant to the prosecution. This material can be reviewed very quickly. I'm going to say one other thing here, by the way. Lawyers retain part-time attorneys, paralegals, other folks, right? People who are qualified, like maybe who haven't practiced in a while, to do document review all the time. One of the ways in which people who are no longer actively practicing can make extra money on the side is they can go sit in a document review room on a contractual hire contract, having signed all the relevant, documents about confidentiality and everything else, and they can do this work for the primary lawyers. So the claim that there is going to be some massive need for delay here is just flat out garbage. Now, on the Patreon feed a couple of weeks ago, when we were talking about the videotape footage out of Mar-a-Lago that is at issue in the Florida case, I did mention that that's a slightly different situation because there is 1,000 days, apparently, of video footage from Mar-a-Lago that is potentially at issue for the defense to review. They can still hire people to look at that footage, though. They can, hire 1,000 contract attorneys and give them each a day to watch. That could be done, okay? But all that said, video footage is a little bit different than documents. And frankly, I think that the idea that they have to look at every single document here that they're going to be given is probably BS. Like, the last major prosecution I was involved in when I was still practicing part-time was litigation against Countrywide arising out of the housing crisis. And in that case, there were literally, like, I think if I'm remembering correctly, something on the range with all the different defendants that were involved of like 1 billion pages of documents that had been turned over. They loaded that into a database, and, lawyers and contract attorneys from 6 different law firms went to town on it, and that document review was completed within a couple of months. So the idea that there isn't, a way to review all of this at fundamentally a very rapid pace with Donald Trump's resources and the ability to pay for it is kind of garbage. There really isn't any argument to be made that a trial date should be delayed because they need time to review materials when these materials can be reviewed in rapid order if they just try it like a regular case. I just really I'm not worried about it. I mean, I think a lot of people here are like, oh, they're turning over 1 million pages of documents and get really scared. I'm just going to tell you all that, like back in like 1999, in my first few years as a federal trial lawyer, I did a case against Monsanto about genetically engineered food and seeds, where they turned over 750,000 pages of documents in hard copy, and the scanning technology was not available yet. And I spent months sitting in opposing counsel's offices in St. Louis, Missouri, like literally, like basically lived in St. Louis for 6 months, like flew out there every Sunday night, flew back every Friday night, and, led a team of lawyers that reviewed those documents by hand. Nobody has to do that anymore. That's not what's required, okay? And even in that situation, with a team of like 20 lawyers, we got through those documents in 6 months. So there really just isn't any kind of, concern here legitimately about the timing that it's going to take to do this. Okay, Amy, I just want to mention this really quick here because I know that people are having an issue about the video pausing on a periodic basis. Let me just address this. First of all, it's not going to be there on the replay. Second of all, we are streaming in HD. And one of the things that means is that depending on the quality of the stream, which by the way, I am troubleshooting this weekend. So hopefully by Monday, it's going to be better because I think what has to happen is I've got to like directly log into my router. If you are seeing a video pause every 20 seconds, you still should be getting audio just fine. But we're committed to streaming in the highest quality that we can. And so we're going to have to troubleshoot this one way or another. So just be patient with us. And I will let you know that on the replay, this isn't going to happen because StreamYard is recording this as I record it from my end, and it will be fine. Also, if you have a high level stream yourself, you may be having an easier time on this than if you don't. Okay, so some of this is about internet speed. All right, thank you for your patience on that. Okay, so that's the deal with regard to Trump's trial date. And really, nobody should buy, this is the top level takeaway. Nobody should buy the idea that they need 2.5 years to review materials. Just garbage, okay? All right, and that's why I laughed. Because honestly, I got to tell you guys, I tried, this leads me to my next point, but some of you may know this because I think I talked about this like years ago on the Patreon feed. I was involved as a, like, I don't know, 5th or 6th year associate at a law firm in the largest securities fraud case that had been brought to date in the United States of America at that time. It was a case against literally every mutual fund company in the United States. And it was a price fixing case. It was a case related to fees concerning trading and that sort of thing. Actually, it wasn't price fixing, but it was securities. And that case had, I am not joking, like 300 lawyers on the opposing side from mine. Okay. One of the things that people need to realize about these big cases, because somebody asked a question here about, like, how is Fani Willis going to try a case that has, like, 19 separate defendants? 19 separate defendants is nothing. Okay. Like, I mean, I got to remind you all that there is massive litigation happening in this country all the time, and judges can manage it. Now, in that mutual funds case that I was a part of, it was all consolidated under the multi-state litigation panel. That's another kind of, like, little nuance you don't really need to know about right now, but to a courthouse in Baltimore, Maryland. And the reason why is that there is a courtroom in Baltimore, Maryland, that is an auditorium-sized courtroom. And it was built in conjunction with, I think it was like an antitrust case against Microsoft, but literally, like, the federal courthouse in Baltimore added an enormous courtroom that could house massive litigation. All right. So the facilities exist to do huge trials in this country. The courts are used to handling huge trials in this country. And I just want everybody to kind of understand that I have no fear. Let's just put it that way. As somebody who has done cases that big, about trying a case against 19 defendants. Like, judges have ways of managing this. There's actually, like, whole litigation manuals that are written about complex litigation, about how to handle it when you have multiple defendants and multiple trial attorneys in the same courtroom and in the same discovery processes and all of that. This is something that the courts can handle. So again, the idea that this case is too complex for all of them to be tried at once, I'm sorry, like, not true. Not true. I mean, if you've ever sat, as I have, and, I was handling a whole segment of discovery for the largest multi-district federal securities case that had ever been filed in America at that point. Like, I was literally in charge of all the litigation related to state discovery that was attached to that case. You know that, like, courts can handle this stuff. Like, this is not a big deal. And there will be motions from different defendants. As I said on Wednesday, there's a very strong likelihood that it will not be 19 defendants by the time they get to trial, because some of these people are going to plead out. And, it will be handled. Like, it's not going to be a mess. It's going to be complex. It's going to be complicated, but it's not going to be a mess. And I'll just say that even with a relatively new judge, like the state court judge that has been assigned in Fulton County, who's only been on the bench since January, a lot of people don't realize that there are whole training programs for new judges before they take the bench. They have a whole orientation, both in federal court and in state courts, about how to manage their courtrooms and how to hire their clerks and how to handle various aspects of litigation, how to make sure that orders are written and how to make sure they go to the clerk's office. Like, none of this is tough. I know that it seems tough to the layperson, and that, by the way, is why I'm here, because I really want you guys to understand that all these arguments that may be made for purposes of the court of public opinion that are like, oh, this is too complicated, there's no way this can be handled, there's no way this can be litigated effectively, this is a mess, so you can't believe she did it. No lawyer who has practiced, I'll just say this, like, maybe a baby lawyer, somebody who's new, maybe somebody who only practices in very small litigations in, like, small claims court, would feel like this was a big deal. To me, this is nothing. Like, I look at this and I'm like, sorry, and I just have to say, by the way, I have to remind everybody here that I was involved in the third Trump bankruptcy in the Atlantic City casino cases, the third. There was one, there was two, there was three, on behalf of some of his creditors. And that was a case where literally there were, like, dozens of people who his casinos and entities who his casinos owed money to. And that case was litigated in the District Court of New Jersey in Camden with no problem. Yes, there were dozens of lawyers in the courtroom, but it was not really a big deal. Like, they managed this. So this is something that we all should just understand is a delay tactic whenever it's raised. It's also propaganda by the right when they're like, oh my God, I can't believe she, you have Jim Jordan out there saying, like, it's against the law right now for you to reserve a conference room for a meeting. No, it's against the law for you to compile a slate of fraudulent electors and do steps in conspiracy to make sure those fraudulent electors steal an election, right? But they're out there saying all this garbage about the law that isn't actually accurate. And so one of the reasons why, by the way, we decided to come back live here is because People deserve to be informed. They deserve to be informed about the way that this stuff actually works. Okay, so that's that. All right, I was asked again this morning about the issue of removal and the idea that some of these defendants are trying to move their cases to federal court. So I talked about this at length on Wednesday, and you can go back and watch Wednesday's broadcast and get the details about that. There is a new development since then about the fact that Rudy Giuliani now wants to move his case to federal court. Good luck. I'm not sure he really has a basis to do that, but we will see. And, I just have to say that, as I said on Wednesday, the only benefit that they may arguably get from this is like a kind of like roll of the roulette wheel to get a better jury pool. That's really all that they're after. And there's no guarantees that that will actually be the case for all the reasons that I talked about how juries are vetted on Wednesday. All right. So they're going to try. Federal judge in Georgia is going to rule on whether or not the removal petitions are legitimate. And that's going to be a different analysis for every defendant that tries this. Because reminder, Mark Meadows is trying it because he was a federal official and he's claiming he was acting in the scope of his duties. Like how you can plan an insurrection. Planning an insurrection is not within the scope of your duties. Planning to overthrow the election, the 2020 election rather, is not within the scope of your duties as the chief of staff of the White House. But good luck to him. That's going to be ruled on by the federal judge in the district court in Georgia that they've sought to remove it to. And it can be returned to the state court if they don't meet the requirements. So, again, we're going to have to see how this kind of goes. All right. One of the things that I just want to mention here in this regard as well is that there was somebody who, I guess Keisha Lance Bottoms, I didn't see this interview, but apparently Keisha Lance Bottoms said something on a mainstream newscast that she didn't think Fani Willis would try the case. And somebody on the feed was like, why wouldn't she try her own case? Why wouldn't she do this? Okay, so I have to mention something to you all here about just the way that district attorneys' offices work, okay? Fani Willis, as you know, from looking at that press conference, if you watched it or you watched the replay footage from Monday night, has a whole swath of prosecutors working for her as the district attorney, all right? And one of the things that happens when you're a DA is that you are not necessarily directly involved in the prosecution of every single case that comes before your office. Part of that is because in the role of district attorney, you have an enormous amount of administrative responsibilities. You got to make sure that all those cases are well staffed. You've got to be reviewing the work of assistant district attorneys who are doing their job, right? You've got to make sure that you're managing how the flow of work works through your office. There's all sorts of reasons why actual district attorneys are not necessarily practicing in court the way that they were when they were ADAs. So there's nothing shocking or surprising about that comment. Now, all that said, I would not be surprised in this situation to see Fani Willis in the courtroom from time to time. She may not be the immediate prosecutor of the case, right? She may not be the person who is in charge of like doing most of the presentation of evidence and cross-examination and oral argument and everything else. But I think it's a high stakes enough case that she will be directly involved more than your average DA would be. All right. So I don't want anybody to think that because Keisha Lance Bottoms made a statement to the effect of, I don't think Fani's going to try this case herself, that somehow she's abdicated responsibility. That's not true. It just may be that there are prosecutors, and I would expect them, by the way, to be the best prosecutors in her office, given the significance of this case, will be the people in charge of actually conducting the trial. We'll see. And, frankly, I'm just going to say one other thing about this, because I think it is really relevant. Because DAs themselves generally aren't in court as much as the regular ADAs are, sometimes it can really backfire to have a district attorney in court when they're not as familiar with the evidence as the ADA, when they're not directly involved in the testimony and review of, deposition information and statements that have been made to federal or state investigators. Like, you want the lawyers who are directly involved in pulling together the evidence to be doing the work in court. All that said, I would expect her to be involved here. Maybe not, like I said, every day, but I can't imagine that she's not going to be involved in some really active oversight way at the bare minimum. So again, I don't want anybody to get kind of agitated about that. All right. Okay. Let's see here. Roger Stone. Gotta love these guys. I just have to say that I continue to just be stunned from time to time by the way these guys are so willing to actively crime on camera. Like it just, I know that it's white privilege, and I know that it's the belief that no one will ever hold you accountable. And I know that, you know, Roger Stone is a narcissist, just like Donald Trump. Like, I get it all, but I'm just gonna tell you all, the willingness to literally be on the phone talking about overthrowing the 2020 election while cameras for a documentary crew are shooting you has got to be like the dumbest criminal activity you could imagine, right? So this is what happened on Chris Hayes' show on Wednesday night. Oh no, it wasn't Chris Hayes, it was Ari Melber. They broke this footage from this documentary crew. And by the way, I think this is the same documentary crew that was with him in the Willard on January 6th, where like they shot him being like, holy crap, we've got to get out of town because we might be arrested for this invasion of the Capitol building, right? I think this is the same crew. And they have footage of him on the phone talking about the fraudulent elector scheme, saying like, well, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to pull together these fraudulent electors and they're going to submit a different version of the electoral votes. And that way, if we need them, their electoral votes will be counted as opposed to the legitimate electors. That, by the way, is one whole basis of Jack Smith's indictment of Donald Trump in DC. So, you know, and it's also a big part of like Keisha Lance Bottoms' case in, not Keisha Lance Bottoms, my apologies, I'm confused again. Fani Willis's case in Georgia. It's stunning what these guys are willing to do, because it's always guys. Not always Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell, but, you know, like they're not criming on camera. So, you know, I agree with people who are like, oh, well, here's a reason for a superseding indictment. Here's a reason why we might see Roger Stone added to the mix here. Now, I'm going to say one thing about this. You know, Roger Stone is constantly referred to as a trickster. I don't really like that term. You know, I don't really particularly think he deserves to be put in the realm of like Loki or anyone else. He is very problematic in every instance where he has been a defendant before. Okay. And one of the things that that I think about as a litigator from a litigation standpoint is whether or not I want someone who makes that much of a mess of every single circumstance in which they're involved in to try to distract, to try to make trouble, to try to make it hard on people. Do I want him in the mix of this case in Georgia? I don't know. I might want to think about that as a separate series of indictments. But again, we'll have to see. Jennifer, just to answer your question, I don't think anybody knew until Ari Melber broke this footage on Wednesday night that he was involved in the fraudulent elector scheme. I don't think anybody knew that. They knew he was involved in the overthrow of January 6th, the overthrow of the Capitol building on January 6th. I don't think anybody had any idea that he was involved in the fraudulent elector scheme. So this, you know, and I will just say, no indications of that in any of the January 6th committee testimony, right? They knew he was at the Willard, but I don't think anybody had any idea that the fraudulent elector scheme was also had Roger Stone as an active participant. So I think that's the reason why he hasn't been indicted yet. But I'll just tell you, if I was a federal prosecutor or a state prosecutor who was already involved in all of this and I was looking at that, I'd be like, no better evidence in a court of law than videotape. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens with that. All right. The Fulton County District Attorney's Office announced, well, it's Fulton County Sheriff's Office actually, announced yesterday that they are investigating the publication of the addresses and names of the grand jurors who indicted Trump and the other defendants in Fulton County. All of those grand jurors were doxxed online on a far-right website. We know that we expected that this was going to happen because in Georgia, grand jurors' identities are public, unlike in many other places. We knew that this was likely to take place. Of course, there is a lot of concern about the safety of grand jurors. Prosecutors, we know somebody was arrested in Texas for threatening Judge Chutkan, the judge who is overseeing the Trump prosecution in DC, and for threatening, by the way, like the entire Democratic Party and, you know, all sorts of other people. But you know, we know that this is a risk right now in the context of what's going on. It's one reason why the statements that Trump is making that are interfering with the jury pool, threatening witnesses and the like, are also of concern with regard to the safety of public officials and grand jurors. So I'm going to remind everybody, it's a federal crime to threaten a judge. It's a state crime to threaten a judge. And it's also potentially a crime under state and federal law to threaten a juror, a grand juror, to engage in jury interference. all of this is potentially at stake here in the context of this particular investigation into the grand jurors. So we're going to have to see what Fulton County does next. We know they're investigating it. And, you know, frankly, I, at this point, am kind of quite a bit concerned about whether or not those people are getting security protection. But I'll just say one other thing. In light of the fact that Fani Willis literally was prepping the sheriff's office for this series of events in May, I can't imagine that there is not some unknown, not public plan to protect grand jurors, because they did everything right in Fulton County in terms of how to make sure that there was safety, there was protection. They walked that indictment from the clerk's office to the judge and back to the clerk's office with security protection, with the sheriff's office and the bailiffs with them. They videotaped the whole thing. Like, I can't imagine that they don't have some plan for keeping these grand jurors safe in the event that they are physically or publicly threatened, as they have been now. All right. E. Jean Carroll. Okay, so let me just say one thing here, all right? If anybody hasn't grasped this yet, the walls are really closing in right now on Donald Trump, okay? He's not going to get this 2026 trial date that he wants in the Jack Smith case. Fani Willis is asking for a trial date of March 4th, 2024, which is literally right before Super Tuesday, and she may get it. Jack Smith has asked for a trial date starting January 2nd. And Trump can't avoid all of this. He's not going to be able to escape the looming trial dates that are coming now going forward. All right. He did try to delay the second E. Jean Carroll case on the argument that there is an appeal pending of the first case. And this morning, the Judge Kaplan, Southern District of New York, I appeared in front of that judge. He's very no nonsense. Ruled that the second trial will not be delayed while the appeal is pending. So that case is also going to trial in January 2024. That is, of course, a civil matter, another defamation case. E. Jean Carroll, of course, won the first one. So, you know, he's staring down a bunch of different litigation barrels right now. And the likelihood here that, you know, he's going to end up in multiple trials that may overlap is quite possible. Now, I said on Wednesday, he does not have to be present in every one of these cases. He can waive his right to be present. He certainly doesn't have to be present in the civil matter involving E. Jean Carroll. And he wasn't, by the way, for that whole trial. So how this is all going to be scheduled, you know, there is obviously probably going to be some coordination amongst the various criminal prosecutions that are underway. But really, it's a matter of the individual judge deciding when they're going to set a trial date. How a judge manages a trial is to the judge. It's not up to anybody else, not up to Trump's lawyers. It's not even up to the prosecution. It's up to the judge. So he's going to be in a world of hurt come early 2024. That's my expectation. And, you know, it's going to be high drama and a lot of courtroom time. And we're probably going to be here 5 days a week at that point, because it's going to be really fascinating to watch how this all rolls down. But, you know, please understand that, you know, we're moving into a window where the vise is really tightening around him. And I think he knows it. You know, this is the other thing. He canceled that press conference he said he was going to have on Monday that was going to have this report that was going to exonerate him of everything. By the way, that whole thing would have been jury interference anyhow, right? It could potentially have been witness interference and, you know, witness intimidation, depending on what he said. And, you know, if it included all of his stuff about deranged Jack Smith and everything else that he says here that tends to be like on the verge of threatening the prosecutor, there are additional charges that could have been added. So it appears that he may have finally listened to his lawyers for once. Do I expect that that's going to last? Absolutely not. But my expectation is that somebody finally said to him, you're going to actually end up in pretrial detention if you continue doing this stuff publicly in relation to this trial. So you decide if you want to be in jail while you're running for president or not. And here we are. Again, as I said, I do not expect that he is going to end up listening to his lawyers forever. Because for all the reasons that we talked about already this week, he finds it impossible to keep his mouth shut. Okay. Let's see what else I have here. Okay. Couple of other things here related that are not related to Trump that I want people to be aware of. Fifth Circuit issued a ruling on mifepristone. This is an appeal out of the Texas case that was trying to stop abortion pills from being distributed. This was the one that involved like the FDA, the Trump appointed judge saying the FDA was so wrong when they said this drug was safe. Like a federal judge is allowed to overrule the FDA, but okay, whatever. The Fifth Circuit said, we have concerns, and the opinion is like really weird, like really, really weird, not a legitimate legal basis, right? It says, anybody looking at a picture of a fetus would be emotionally moved by that. That's not a reason to ban mifepristone. Like, and also, like, federal courts are not supposed to opine on things on the basis of how they personally feel about the images on a sonogram. So all of this is very weird, but the good news is, and this is the high-level takeaway that I want everybody to hear right now, mifepristone is still available, okay? It has not been banned inside the United States. The ruling of the Fifth Circuit even is stayed pending additional appeals, okay? So if you are in need of abortion care and you live in a state where abortion care is not available to you any longer, you can still access abortion pills by mail. Okay. Nothing is stopping you from being able to get abortion care if you need it. And that message should be loud and clear. Like, abortion pills are still legal in America. All right. Now, I know this is a dangerous situation. I know it potentially is going to go up to the Supreme Court. I'm just going to tell everybody that I think that there's an interesting and potentially like an exit ramp for the Supreme Court on this one, which is really about whether or not federal courts can overrule the FDA. That is a larger principle that applies to everything, not just to mifepristone. Like, I just want everybody to imagine, like, what would happen if a federal court judge said, oh no, the measles vaccine isn't safe. You should not be giving American kids don't need the measles vaccine. That's not like legitimate. There is no like legal basis for a federal judge to overrule that. Like, a federal judge is not a doctor. A federal judge is not an FDA review panel. A federal judge is not a medical professional engaged in medical research. Like, so there are larger issues at play in that case than just the issue of abortion pills. And I think everybody should kind of like not panic, but understand that it's grave, but also understand that the Supreme Court may have an exit from this that would make it all like quite a bit easier to manage. Okay. All right. So that's that. I also just want to mention that there is a very good ruling out of the Ninth Circuit in Idaho that dropped yesterday. This has been a long-standing appeal on behalf of a trans child who wanted to participate in sports. The ACLU litigated it, and the Ninth Circuit ruled that Idaho's prohibition on trans kids participating in sports is likely unconstitutional. Now, this is all something that, Darlene, the Fifth Circuit does not just cover Louisiana. The Fifth Circuit covers, as every circuit does, a multitude of states and their federal courts. Okay, so it's not just Louisiana. The Fifth Circuit also covers Texas. The Ninth Circuit, which covers California, a bunch of the Pacific Northwest, and Idaho, ruled yesterday that this provision under Idaho law is likely unconstitutional, and the federal court challenge was successful. There was a lot of celebration in the ACLU's social media feeds and the like for this. But I'm going to remind everybody, one of the reasons why this is relevant is that it's precedent. So assuming that the ruling is upheld, one of the things that this means is that other federal courts, when they receive state challenges to bans on trans kids, and by the way, because it's all under equal protection grounds, this is about sports. It's also about bathrooms. It's also about education. It's also about medical care access. All right. If it violates the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment, all of it is unconstitutional. And so it's really good news. This is really, really good news. And I hope that it becomes like, you know, precedential authority that's relied on by other federal courts that hear the challenges like this. It's a very big deal. Okay. Last things for today. I mentioned this, well, I didn't really mention this briefly, but I'm going to put this flyer up here because Britt got really mad at me this week. Because I didn't mention that we've got this brand new program that starts the day after Labor Day called Fall Reboot 2023 Life, Work, and Impact. The link to get in on that is below. It's also linked below this video in the comments, in the show notes to this video on YouTube. If you want to get in on it, it's a 6-week program. There's a training video that drops every Tuesday. There's a live call with me every Thursday, and it is life, work, and impact. The impact part being, what are you going to do to make the world a better place for the rest of the year and into 2024? I'm really excited about this program. We've never run it before. It's very affordable. There are payment plans attached to it. There's also a limited number of slots left to up-level to private coaching with yours truly if you would like to do that through this. But we're going to be spending a chunk of that program, like a very sizable chunk of that program, actually like a third of it, working on how to do the work that you know you need to do in the world, whether that's canvassing, whether that's like getting out the vote, whether it's work in your own community, whether it's work on local elections, and also what we're all going to be needing to do to get ready to 2024 in that program. So if you're interested in that, there's the link. It's also linked below on YouTube. And then lastly, I just have to remind everybody, our Patreon subscribers are just like the most amazing community of people. Like, I can't get over you guys. I just have to say thank you so much. When I mentioned taking this broadcast live 3 days a week again, we polled the community yesterday. When I checked it last night, there were like 233 comments from people saying like, we support you. We've been here for 7 years. Taking the broadcast public again is really needed right now. We're going to continue to support the broadcast financially, because this is a lot of work on our part as a team. I just want to say thank you so much to all of you. You're amazing. I love you. I'm so grateful for all of you. And if you're not yet a Patreon subscriber, head on over to patreon.com/resistancelive. You can have the opportunity to ask questions in advance of the broadcast every day that we're live here, which is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We're doing a Sunday coffee hour now. That Sunday coffee hour now is exclusive to Patreon members. I know there's been a lot of different back and forth on this week. Thank you for sticking with me. And also there's added benefits coming from people in the higher tiers, like the return of swag. I'm actually really excited about this. I know like swag may not be something that gets most people excited, but Britt and I and the rest of the team are working on like some gift boxes that hopefully we will be able to start getting out to people in the higher tiers before too long, with our new revised logo and some like really, I mean, like yummy gear. And, you know, I'm all about like the gear. So get on over there if you're interested in that. Subscribe, please. And I will see all of you here back on YouTube live on Monday. All right. I'm so grateful for all of you. You're awesome. Yes, merch, swag. I'm very excited. And these kind of comments are like the things that were all over Patreon yesterday. And I just have to say, you know, sometimes I sit here in front of this camera and I'm like, are we making a difference? Are we having an impact? And it's this kind of stuff that like really just makes me joyous and feel seen and feel, you know, happy to be doing this work. All right. So I'm so grateful for all of you. Yes, swag. I'm so grateful for all of you. And I will see you all here on Monday. Have a great weekend. And I'll see our Patreon subscribers on Sunday morning for coffee hour. Thanks, everyone. Much love to all of you. Have a great weekend. Try to get some rest. Self-care is so important right now. And I don't just mean like regular self-care. I mean like seriously manage your stress. And I will see you all back here on Monday morning. All right. Much love, everybody. Take care. Oh, and stay safe. If you're in the hurricane zone, please take this very seriously, because this is going to be no joke come Sunday. All right. Bye.